It's a startling revelation from former Homeland Security Secretary Tom Ridge. Ridge claims he felt pressure to raise the country's terror alert level during the run-up to the 2004 elections.
Hello, my name is James Lane.
And I'm Holland van den Nieuwenhof, and we're from Free Mind Report. We're speaking to you today on a matter of grave importance. There are signs of something terrible in the works, of a hidden force in action whose methodology we recognize because it has happened before. We are programmed by the government and the media to remain ignorant or misinformed about history, but it's time we wake up and take action because our very lives and liberties are at stake.
Leaving not even the most sacred untouched, the recent news of the Christmas tree bomber has tainted our most precious memories with fear. An American teenager named Osman Muhammad was arrested on November 27, 2010 for attempting to bomb a Christmas tree lighting ceremony in Portland, Oregon. The only information we have on this is an FBI affidavit, and of course that agency's own self-serving leaks to the media. The FBI went to extraordinary efforts to recruit this confused young man into jihad. They sent an agent to have him recruited. They supplied him with the materials, the target, and even made him a de facto employee of the FBI by giving him thousands of dollars and setting him up in an apartment. Then, of course, the headline-grabbing event reminds us all that we'll never be free from terror, nor the ever-present and growing police state that is required to keep us safe.
Our federal authorities were all over this from the very beginning, which goes all the way back to last June, and they were with this young man every step of the way.
So over the 18 months, they cultivated him.
The FBI had been conducting an undercover operation. Authorities then supplied the teen with fake explosives, which he then allegedly loaded up in that car. He's been charged with attempted use of a weapon of mass destruction.
The van that he thought was blowing up carried 6 55-gallon drums with detonation cords and plastic caps, but all of that supplied by undercover agents.
But who benefits from terrorism? It certainly is not Islam nor any other group that may be blamed. This is only the most recent in a string of terrorism scares that are occurring so often that we forget there was a time when we were even concerned with our natural rights. What about the timing? Did this arrest have anything to do with the international protest against the Transportation Security Agency's invasive pat-downs and naked scanners? Remember how the naked scanners came to be? Remember the last Christmas bomber? On Christmas Day of last year on Flight 253, a young man was arrested for terrorism. This time it was Omar Abdulmutallab. He tried to light his crotch on fire, and he was tackled by passengers. The fact that the passengers stopped the attack and not the FBI has revealed some interesting details about the case, including the fact that the young bomber was escorted onto the plane by a, quote, sharp-dressed man who was able to talk the airline employees into letting him on without even the most basic of security procedures, a valid ID.
The suspect approached with a well-dressed Indian man. He looked like he was wealthy, maybe around age 50, and obviously he wasn't the suspect. Yeah, to me, he just looked like a poor black teenager, maybe around 16 or 17 years old. Mm-hmm. And they weren't doing anything out of the ordinary except that they were together, which they kind of looked like an odd couple to me. Mm-hmm. And it kind of caught my curiosity, so I watched them as they approached the ticket agent. And I was about 10 feet away, sitting on the floor, and it was pretty quiet. I could hear, the conversation pretty well. And only the Indian man spoke. And what he said was, this man needs to board the plane, and he doesn't have a passport. And the ticket agent then responded saying, well, you need a passport to board the plane. And the Indian man then said, he's from Sudan. We do this all the time.
We must ask ourselves, who is this we that the well-dressed man was referring to? Although the government at first denied this account, they quietly confirmed it months later, saying it was of no importance. And that well-dressed man remains unidentified to this day. The passenger stories remain consistent. It's the FBI that changed their story numerous times. Despite these inconsistencies, the underwear bomber event was used to usher in the naked body scanners used nationwide by the TSA. Scanners made by a company with financial ties to former Secretary of Homeland Security Michael Chertoff. One attack at Christmas to justify the scanners, and another the following year to justify their existence in the face of nationwide dissent.
More than that, the underwear bomber incident just happened to occur as President Obama was facing a quandary with the renewal of the USA Patriot Act, which expires at the end of each year. President Obama was facing pressure from the grassroots left to follow through on his campaign promises to not renew the Patriot Act. Then, of course, after the underwear bomber incident, the president has the reason and the excuse he needs to sign it back into law. And this year, after the Christmas tree bombing, we can be assured that President Obama will once again renew the Patriot Act. What do you think will happen next year, next Christmas, to justify the renewal of the Patriot Act? Is anyone out there naive enough to think that this government, which manufactured a war out of thin air to plunder a country, steal her resources, kill 1 million Iraqis, would hesitate to use terrorism to advance a political agenda?
These recent sting operations may provide an opportunity for something darker, something that may push the manipulations of our fear even farther. We are speaking to you from Oklahoma City, and there is a vast amount of evidence to show that the Oklahoma City bombing in 1995 was a joint FBI and ATF sting operation conducted in conjunction with assets from the Southern Poverty Law Center that was hijacked by others unknown. These agencies had informants placed alongside the alleged lone bomber Timothy McVeigh. Some of these informants, like Carol Howe, have revealed that the federal government knew that the Alfred P. Murrah Federal Building was going to be attacked.
I know of too many people that were talking about that building, talking about Oklahoma City, talking about doing something on that date using a truck bomb. It cannot be coincidence to use that many specifics.
Confirming this is Oklahoma State Representative Charles Key, who was told by a United States Senate staffer that congressmen had been briefed that the Oklahoma City bombing was the result of a sting gone bad. They had planned to stop it at the last minute in order to reap the publicity and budget assurances that would follow. But it blew up in their faces literally, and 168 people, including 19 children, were brutally murdered.
The public doesn't have the right to know why 168 of its citizens were killed in a government operation. That no one was punished for such a mistake tells us one of two things. One, that without accountability, such mistakes are bound to happen again, causing further casualties. Or two, that it wasn't a mistake, that the operation was considered a success. Either way, it's dangerous, but we have reason to think that it's more nefarious than a mere mistake. There is a vast amount of evidence that there were explosives placed inside the federal building at Oklahoma City to maximize the damage and the body count. Although this evidence wasn't presented at trial for obvious reasons, at least one arm of the government does agree. The Wright Armaments Laboratory at Elgin Air Force Base conducted a series of explosive tests on concrete structures to test the damage at Oklahoma City. In the conclusion of their report, they state, quote, "It must be concluded that the damage at the Murrah Federal Building is not the result of the truck bomb itself, but rather due to other factors such as locally placed charges within the building itself." End quote. So, who had access to the federal building? Who stood to gain from the Oklahoma City bombing? Remember your history, that it was the 1996 Anti-Terrorism Act, passed in response to the bombing, that is the precursor to the Patriot Act, which itself was passed in response to 9/11. Although State Representative Charles Key maintains his contention that the Oklahoma City bombing was a result of a sting gone bad, we have reason to think, evidence to support it, that the sting operation provided a vehicle for a darker element of our government to carry out its political agenda.
The Oklahoma City bombing was blamed on right-wing extremists, but our current terror infatuation is centered on Islamic extremists. This did not start with September 11th. The first attack on the World Trade Center was in 1993. In that attack, a Ryder rental truck, exactly like the one used in Oklahoma City, was packed with explosives and detonated in the parking garage of the World Trade Center. 6 people were killed, and over 1,000 were injured. It was later revealed by the New York Times and CBS that that attack could not have occurred without assistance from the FBI. Informant Ahmad Salam was paid to infiltrate a group of supposed Islamic extremists, talk them into attacking the Twin Towers, and even help them construct the bomb. He later became nervous whenever the FBI was providing him with real explosives to give to the patsies, so he started to record his telephone conversations with his FBI handler.
We was start already building the bomb, which is went off in the World Trade Center. It was built by supervision from the Bureau and the DA, and we was all informed about it, and we know that the bomb start to be built. By who? By your confidential informant. What a wonderful, great case.
The FBI told him to go through with the bombing, and he did. Ahmad Salam has since disappeared into the Witness Protection Program, but none of the agents that were responsible were ever held accountable. This is a perfect example of a sting operation that went live.
The FBI and the Department of Homeland Security are engaged in a campaign that pays dividends on an almost weekly basis with these entrapment and sting operations. This we know. But even more dangerous is the prospect of one of these sting operations going live, of going through with the attack when the stakes are higher than mere politics. We saw this with Oklahoma City. We saw this with the first World Trade Center attack in 1993. And yes, my friends, with 9/11. And it will happen again. What we see is the mechanism for false flag terror attacks in operation, just waiting for the word to take it to the next level.
With the now constant drumbeat of war and the failing economies, governments are in desperate need of a new distraction. We have been conditioned to think that we are constantly under attack, so nobody's going to be surprised when it happens again in a big way. It was George Orwell that said in his book 1984, the consciousness of being at war and therefore in danger makes the handing over of all power to a small caste seem the natural, unavoidable condition of survival. We need to expose these sting operations for how truly dangerous they are. And remember, without truth, there is no justice.